Tuesday, November 20th, 2019. Following a period of transition, a new government has been installed by the Governor of St. Martin. Newly appointed Prime Minister Ms. Silveria Jacobs then took the official oath of office before His Excellency Governor Holliday.
Ik zweer dat ik middelijk, nog onmiddellijk, onder welke naam of wat voorwendsel ook, in verband met het verkrijgen van mijn benoeming als minister aan iemand, wie hij ook zij, iets heb gegeven of beloofd, nog zal geven. Ik zweer dat ik om iets hoegenaamd in deze betrekking te doen of te laten van niemand hoegenaamd enige belofte of enig geschenk aannemen zal, middelijk of onmiddellijk. Ik zweer trouw aan de koning en aan het statuut voor het koninkrijk dat ik de staatsregeling van Sint Maarten steeds zal helpen onderhouden en het welzijn van Sint Maarten naar mijn vermogen zal voorstaan.
So truly help me God Almighty.
Mr. Christopher Waver, Minister of Public Housing, Spatial Planning, Environment and Infrastructure.
Ik zweer, verklaar dat ik middelijk, nog onmiddellijk, onder welke naam of wat voorwendsel ook, in verband met het verkrijgen van mijn benoeming als minister aan iemand, wie jij ook zij, iets heb gegeven of beloofd of zal geven. Ik zweer, beloof dat ik om iets hoegenaamd in deze betrekking te doen of te laten, van niemand hoegenaamd enige belofte of enig geschenk aannemen zal, middelijk of onmiddellijk. Ik zweer, beloof, trouw aan de koning en aan het statuut voor het koninkrijk, dat ik de staatsregeling van Sint Maarten steeds zal helpen onderhouden en het welzijn van Sint Maarten naar mijn vermogen zal voorstaan.
That I declare and promise.
Mr. Ardwell Arian, Minister of Finance and Acting Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport.
So truly help me God Almighty.
Mr. Egbert Duran, Minister of Justice and Acting Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labor.
So truly help me God Almighty.
And Mr. Rene Violinas, Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transportation and Telecommunications.
So truly help me God Almighty.
After the official oath-taking, His Excellency Governor Holliday delivered the Transfer of Governing Responsibility Address to the ministers and invited guests at the ceremony.
On September 22nd, 2019, a shift in the majority in Parliament took place, resulting in the request to form a new government and in the decision of the outgoing government to dissolve Parliament and call new elections on January 9th, 2019. Based on the request of the new majority to form a new government, I consulted with various persons and on September 30th, 2019, named Ms. Silveria Jacobs as formateur to form an interim government. Ms. Jacobs accepted the formation assignment and presented her final report on Saturday evening, November 16, 2019. To all who gave their input to the transition and formation process, and in particular to formateur Ms. Silveria Jacobs, I hereby express my appreciation also on behalf of the people of St. Martin. Ladies and gentlemen, you have, as a result of the formation process, just witnessed the transfer of executive responsibility for the governance of our country to a new team of ministers, supported by the new majority in Parliament. Prime Minister, ministers, still have to get accustomed to that, right? As you assume your mandate to govern our beautiful country in these difficult and challenging times, I shall share a few thoughts with you. Accepting the position of minister through the taking of the oath today is a solemn expression of your commitment to perform your duties with integrity. It is your pledge of allegiance to the King and to the Charter of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. It is your individual declaration to always uphold the Constitution of St. Martin. And it is your solemn affirmation to always dedicate yourself to foster the well-being of the people of St. Martin. Through your oath, you have accepted the obligation to serve all the people of St. Martin. I therefore urge you and advise you to use your oath as a guide in the fulfillment of your duties. Having such a guide, or as I would say, an anchor, is important under normal circumstances, and even more so during challenging and difficult times. During the formation process, I emphasized, and now that the formation process is concluded, I wish to re-emphasize that our country faces several pressing challenges for its future development. Considering the interim nature of this government, it was agreed that you will give priority to concluding the legislation regarding the combating of money laundering and financing of terrorism, that you will give priority to the execution of the agreements made with the Netherlands regarding the financing of the national recovery of St. Martin, including the financing of the rehabilitation of the airport, that you will give priority to concluding the 2020 budget, that you will give priority to furthering the preparation of the execution of the scheduled elections, and that you will give priority to realizing electoral reform by bringing the ordinance for the registration and finances of political parties and the election ordinance in accordance with our Constitution. Your giving priority to and following through on existing government commitments on these issues will provide for needed continuity to effectively address the challenges we face despite the political developments. With regard to mentioned challenges, I must stress that the level of urgency in two specific cases, demand that you must act immediately. The first case is that pressing action is needed in the handling of the amendment of the Penal Procedural Code as part of our international commitment to combat money laundering and financing of terrorism. This is necessary to reduce the risk of St. Martin being blacklisted. And the second urgent course of action is the signing of the pending loan agreements for the financing of the rehabilitation of our airport as part of our commitments with the bondholders, with the European Investment Bank, with the World Bank, and with the Netherlands. This is necessary to help secure our airport and our country's long-term economic recovery. Acting immediately means ensuring that Parliament and government take and execute decisions regarding the amendment of the Penal Code Code, Penal Procedural Code, and regarding the airport financing by the end of this week. In other words, you have your work cut out for you. Not doing so can come at a high price, which we cannot afford. To achieve any of these urgent objectives, we will have to work together, at home and with others. It is as such in our interest to take the lead in that regard. To do so, I refer you to and encourage you to apply the guiding principle as outlined in the preamble to our own Constitution, which states that we, the people of St. Martin, are determined to work with each other, with our partners in the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and with all peoples of the world. Thus, Prime Minister, ministers, as you assume the responsibility to govern our country, I urge you and trust that you will apply our guiding principle of cooperation, which underpins our Constitution, in your handling of these urgent matters for our country's future. Prime Minister, ministers, today, almost 2 months since the previous team of ministers made their positions available, you come before the people of St. Martin as a new team of ministers to further the ongoing recovery process aimed at meeting the urgent needs of our people. In that regard, there rests on you, individually as ministers and jointly as Council of Ministers, a great responsibility. Your decisions will have lasting influence on the lives of the people of St. Martin. Thus, as you deliberate on taking action on the matters before you during your governing period, I wish you wisdom, individually and jointly, in the conduct of your responsibilities as you seek to meet your constitutional responsibility to the people of St. Martin. With that in mind, I hereby congratulate the people of St. Martin with the installation of this interim government, and similarly congratulate each of you and your families with your appointment as Prime Minister and ministers of our beautiful country. Thank you, God bless you, and may God bless St. Martin and protect its coast. To St. Martin.
St. Martin.
This is the official group photo of His Excellency Governor Holliday and the new Interim Council of Ministers. Following the official group photo, the new Interim Council of Ministers and His Excellency Governor Holliday then proceeded to the Government Administration Building, where Prime Minister Sylveria Jacobs opened the constituting meeting of the Council of Ministers.
It gives me great pleasure to sit here before you with these esteemed gentlemen. I am the only female here, unfortunately, but I believe that the youth represented here are the voice of St. Martin. And we expect that though it is an interim government that we have formed under circumstances which we have agreed to, knowing that St. Martin is in a very trying time, has been going through very difficult challenges, we believe that with the right mindset, with a heart for country, and the will to persevere despite all obstacles, we will be successful in achieving the goals that have been set forth in the agreement that we made with the formation assignment. Most definitely, the priority of this first sitting in front of you will bring some changes. However, we do know that the seriousness of the reconstruction and rehabilitation, we have agreed to prioritize and recognize the importance of agreements already made, especially as it comes to rehabilitating our country and especially the airport. As such, we will be going into a meeting directly after the official proceedings to hear exactly what some of the problems are surrounding that. In no way can anyone feel that that is not a priority for this government. As we move on, we will honor all agreements, the elections, and all of the other agreements. I'm sure the governor, as you've heard in his speech earlier, we have agreed to that with the formation assignment. All the members sitting before you have agreed to take this country to the next level. That is our priority. As such, that was the opening and welcome. And we move over to the official welcome is now over, and I now hand the floor over to His Excellency Governor Eugene B. Holliday.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We thank you, Prime Minister, for the floor. This morning, during the swearing-in ceremony, I shared a few thoughts with the all present, and I would, at this stage, also make use of the opportunity to once again congratulate the ministers, Prime Minister, on as well as your families with your appointment. As I indicated earlier this morning, you are taking up the responsibility to govern our country at difficult and challenging times. And therefore, as interim government, you have the challenge to address a number of critical issues, as Prime Minister Jacobs just indicated. One of those issues, one of those pressing issues, is the issue of addressing the sign-off on the loan agreements with respect to the rehabilitation of the Princess Juliana International Airport, which is critical, very critical, to the overall recovery of St. Martin. This morning, in doing so, I stressed that actually it is a critical point in that actually it is so urgent that I strongly advise the Council of Ministers to address it this week. The second point that I stressed to the Council of Ministers is the issue of the handling of the law or the code, the penal procedural code, with respect to combating money laundering and combating the financing of terrorism. These are two very, very important issues which I, again, and this second point also strongly urge the Prime Minister to work with Parliament to ensure that this issue can be addressed to ensure that St. Martin does not get blacklisted. So as I indicated earlier this morning, the issues as agreed upon during the formation process in terms of the legislation for combating money laundering in terms of the execution of the agreements made with the Netherlands, and in particular the airport, as well as concluding the 2020 budget, the furthering the preparation of the execution of the scheduled elections, and we all went through the discussions surrounding the issue of the elections in terms of realizing electoral reform to bring the ordinances regarding the registration and financing of political parties, as well as the ordinance on the election for elections in accordance with our constitutions, so that in the future we do not need, we can avoid having the unnecessary back and forth which we have seen in the past few months. So in that regard, I again congratulate the Prime Minister and the ministers. As I indicated earlier, in a private setting, this is the first Council of Ministers with which I'm sitting, where I am, in fact, the oldest sitting on the table. So that's a bit a new situation for myself. So I wish you all much wisdom, much strength in the execution of your task. And once again, congratulations to all of you.
Thank you, Excellency. We now go over to agenda point 2, the signing of the National Decree, Landsbesluit voor de Vervangingsregeling. So the regulation that regulates who replaces whom, which ministers replace whom. After the signing, I will go into an explanation as to what that is exactly. Excellency. According to Article 38 and 39 of the Constitution, the ministers together form the Council of Ministers. The Council, as you just witnessed, signed the National Decree, which outlines specifically which minister replaces whom. In the event that a particular minister is absent, the so-called vervangingsregeling, absence of a minister can, for example, be related to business travel or vacation, as well as sick leave. The current national decree is outlined as follows. The Prime Minister, Minister of General Affairs, myself, will be replaced by Mr. Christopher Waver, who is the Minister of Public Housing, Spatial Planning, Environment, and Infrastructure. The Minister of Finance, to my right, your left, Mr. Artwell Irion, will be replaced by myself, Prime Minister and Minister of General Affairs. The Minister of Justice, to my far left, your right, Mr. Egbert Doran, will be replaced by Mr. Christopher Waver, who is the Minister of Public Housing, Spatial Planning, Environment and Infrastructure. The Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport is currently not yet appointed, and Mr. Artwell Irion, who is the Minister of Finance, will be acting Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport. The Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labor Affairs is also not yet appointed, and Mr. Egbert Duran, who is the Minister of Justice, will be acting Minister of Public Health, Social Development and Labor Affairs. The Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport and Telecommunication, Mr. Rene Vailinas, will be replaced by Minister Artwell Irion, who is the Minister of Finance. And the Minister of Public Housing, Spatial Planning, Environment and Infrastructure, Mr. Christopher Waver, will be replaced by Mr. Rene Vailinas, who is the Minister of Tourism, Economic Affairs, Transport and Telecommunications. I know that may have been confusing to you, but we understand. In the event that the minister and his or her replacement are absent, the Prime Minister, myself, will replace that minister. Otherwise, Minister Christopher Waver will do so. In the case that both of us are absent, as well as those that were mentioned before, then the person who is the eldest in age will replace the minister in question. His Excellency mentioned the age issue, and I would like to say that this is a trend that has been showing up, not just in the polls or on the persons postulating themselves, but we take pride in knowing that we are giving younger candidates the opportunity to represent at this level, and I am very, very proud of all of them. Thank you. A few of the priorities that we have for the coming period would like to be highlighted now as well. After the second part of this constituting meeting, which will be behind closed doors, the Council of Ministers has a lunch meeting scheduled during which the National Recovery Program Bureau, known as the NRPB, and the management of the airport will provide an update on the trust fund in general and the airport specifically. This was done at our request, as I mentioned earlier, in our earnestness to get to the bottom of and finalize the situation. Tomorrow afternoon, the Council of Ministers will visit the airport and witness firsthand the progress which has been made thus far. Ensuring openness, transparency, the weekly press briefings of the Council of Ministers will resume as per tomorrow, Wednesday at 10 a.m. The Council of Ministers will provide a short introduction of themselves and indicate some of their priorities for the upcoming period. Thereafter, ministers are, as per usual, open for press to pose their questions that they may have. The Council is aware that within a very short time span, the ministers need to familiarize themselves with some key items. In addition to the airport, the finalization of the draft budget 2020 is also very high on the priority list. We would at this time like to give a great big thank you to all those, including the outgoing government, for ensuring that the transition documents that our ministers will need to peruse have been prepared. These will be perused during the upcoming days to familiarize themselves with the ongoings, as well as, of course, very key meetings with the Secretary Generals of each ministry. I would at this time also like to thank the coalition which made it possible for these ministers to be sworn in today, and for all who have worked behind the scenes to make this possible. I would like to also formally thank His Excellency the Governor and his cabinet for this very new process that we endured during the formation, with all its ups and downs and hiccups. And for us, it was for me especially, very difficult as a first-timer to understand, even though I've been in a position of minister before, what all happened to make that possible. So I have much more respect for the process than I did before, I must say. So I give thanks to all of those who made it possible, and of course to our Most High, Father God, for blessing the proceedings as we took the oath this morning. With this, I adjourn the meeting for the balance which will take place in behind closed doors, and thank you very much for your presence here this morning, as well as for your support of these ministers and this government in the interim. I thank you.